Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast. Damn you, Hollywood. And here's your host. Back in the 90s, he was on a famous TV show. Robert Winfree. How do you do, sir?
I think you made the wrong reference.
Okay.
Because, that's the opening to BoJack, and we're talking about The Gentleman.
Nope, that is exactly the intro I had planned.
Fair enough.
Because I feel like in this relationship, you're BoJack, and I'm
already offended, but continue. I have to know who you view yourself as in that series.
I think if nothing else for her catchphrase, I think it's Katie Lee. Do I have the character's name right?
Which one?
Did I say? I said Katie Lee. I don't know if I have that right.
I don't think you do, but what's the catchphrase?
Suck a dick, dumb shits.
Oh, you mean Sarah.
Sarah Lee, Lynn. Yes, Sarah Lynn. All right, thank you for having me to...
Only, tragically.
I feel like you're the BoJack Horseman of this relationship, and I'm Sarah Lynn yelling at
dude.
People until, of course, I die of a heroin overdose.
Well, I was going to say, dude, you remember his comedian friend who actually died of cancer, right?
I don't see myself as that guy, though. I feel like I'm more of a Sarah Lynn type.
You're not that short-sighted.
But I really like suck a dick dumb shits. And,
Okay, sure. You like vulgar, profane catchphrases, but that doesn't make you similar to the character.
I suppose not. I don't know.
Let's be clear. We all know I'm not BoJack. I'm Todd.
You're not Todd.
I'm pretty close to Todd. It's kind of disturbing, actually.
You think so, huh?
In all the ways that don't actually matter, yes.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, let's move on. We'll be talking about BoJack in more detail tomorrow.
Hang on, if you're Todd, then I think that I'm Mr. Peanut Butter.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. I think that's accurate, actually.
But we didn't come here to talk about... This isn't TV Party. This isn't Tuesday night. We're not here to talk about BoJack Horseman just yet. We're here to talk about The Gentleman. And I initially was going to call this a TV party because I had watched it on television. But you convinced me that we needed to have yet another discussion about the state of cinema amid the coronavirus pandemic.
Well, considering that the last time anyone on this network had that particular discussion, you were just a despondent, nearly catatonic wreck.
Oh, I was
over
not.
Your schedule. Okay. I shouldn't say catatonic.
Yeah, catatonic that's offensive to me.
You were a combination of despondent and apoplectic.
Yes, that's about right.
And you then you couldn't take the schedule being destroyed, and you actually sent a message in our Facebook Messenger going, "Screw everything, do whatever you want. I don't care anymore. I'm going into the swamps of Florida to live deliberately and be eaten by an alligator."
I stand by that.
So, and now that the dust has settled, emotions have cooled, and you can talk with me instead of Jesse, who, that poor man, is just drowning in the bureaucratic ineptitude of the state of Ohio. We can have a slightly more, again, given the totality of what's at play now, we can have a more sober discussion about the state of things, what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then we can yell at critics, because Lord knows those self-employed jackasses are going to be sucking off the government teat and trying to pretend that what they do is essential, even though it's not only is it not essential, like they could be doing what we're doing, which is finding ways to work around it. I think there's a whole thing we're going to wind up doing over the next little bit where you and I go back and review movies that we didn't get a chance to do on Damn You Hollywood proper. just because, hey, let's fill some time. And we both like talking about movies, and we can discuss the finances of the movie in question and, yell at critics, because we can still do this. We can just do it for retro content.
As an essential healthcare person who is currently battling his own healthcare issues, I can't tell you how much being on Twitter aggravates the living shit out of me when I read some of these people on Twitter complaining about having to social distance and having to be at home. Meanwhile, I'm out, I've got my scrubs on and I'm trudging out there shoving all manner of medication down my throat so as not to vomit phlegm everywhere for my own healthcare reasons. By the way, if one more person asks me if I have the coronavirus and not the same cancer I've had since 2016, I might commit a felony.
Which one? Because there's a lot of felonies.
Probably battery.
Yeah, you could get that talked down to a low misdemeanor. I'd say go for it.
You would.
Anyway, speaking of felonies and the commission thereof, we are talking about The Gentleman today, which was released in 2019, towards the end of the year, if memory serves.
Yeah, actually it was. It was released December 3rd at the Curzon Mayfair Cinema, January 1st. That's cinema. So January 1st, 2020 in the UK, and then January 24th in the US.
Yeah, so this is one of the last movies that got a proper kind of rollout, and unfortunately its theatrical run was largely impacted by the COVID-19 virus, which we'll talk about when we talk about its money. But, Mark, can I just ask you then, before we get into the movie proper,
sure,
why this movie? I'm just curious. There's a lot of movies we could have done that came out that were released in the December-ish era of 2019. I'm genuinely curious what made you go, you know what, Guy Ritchie.
One, and probably the most recent and most relevant, one of my coworkers who I talk movies with was like, have you seen The Gentleman yet? And I said, no, but it's on my list. He said, you gotta watch The Gentleman. I said, okay, well, that's what it's on my list means. As an aside, to the people in my currently cut off circle of coworkers and friends and family, please stop telling me to watch the stupid Tiger King documentary. I get it. It's the new thing that everyone's watching. See my comments on The Mandalorian. Just because it's popular doesn't mean it's something I need to watch, and I certainly don't need to watch it right this second. Fucking leave me alone. I get it. He got eaten by tigers. Get over yourselves. However, when the drama that got optioned by What's-Her-Nuts from SNL comes out, oh boy, I'm all over that.
You're going to have to be way more specific.
The broad that was in Ghostbusters 2016, that wasn't the lead. That wasn't the main lead. Or Melissa McCarthy.
Okay, so we're down to 3 options.
The one that isn't black.
McKinnon. Yeah, Kate McKinnon, I think.
Kate McKinnon. I keep wanting to say Nancy McKinnon, but isn't that an actress on The Simpsons?
That's Nancy Cartwright, I think.
Ugh, that stupid brain and remembering things. So yes, what did we say? Kate McKinnon. Damn it, see, that's why I didn't want to say her name. Kate McKinnon. Yes, when her drama of Tiger King comes out, I'm all over that. That's TV party. But this
I will not be joining you for that.
I'm not even going to ask you.
I appreciate it.
I'm sure I can drag Alexis into that. However,
you can't fire me, I quit.
However, this documentary that's on, I have one of my friends who's a very keeping up with the Joneses kind of guy. And so, of course, he's all over this thing. And I got messages from him and my wife about how great this thing is. And I'm like, great. You know, I'm very French. Everyone in the world is doing this. Well, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna have a sandwich. Which brings us to The Gentleman. This is the kind of movie that I like. I enjoy a good sort of rapid dialogue, stylized gangster picture. I like everybody in the cast. I've enjoyed most of Guy Ritchie's stuff. he has a flashy style to his direction, very ADD, which appeals to me in some ways. And I figured since it was highly recommended and it had just come on VOD, I was like, well, let's talk about it if somebody's interested. And you got to remember, I asked if people were interested. If I got the usual crickets and echo when I announced things into our chat of nobody wanting to do anything I suggest, then we wouldn't be doing it. But you, gracious you, picked up the picked up the banner, and here we are. So that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, I'm just a model of grace.
You are, Bojack. You are.
All right, let's jump into this again. For the record, the gentleman is presented with a narrative device. The majority of this is presented in the style of Hugh Grant's character talking with Charlie Hunnam's character, and then all of this happening via flashback. So rather than try to go through that bit of rigmarole, because there's also a few fake outs where Hugh Grant's character will describe something and then Charlie Hunnam's will go, that didn't happen, right? And then they'll kind of rewind it and do something and show you what did happen.
They're very Clue-like.
Indeed. The crux of the issue comes about from when you follow primarily Matthew McConaughey's character, one Mickey Pearson, who is the marijuana magnate of the United Kingdom. He has succeeded in this by renting land from the aristocracy because of how Britain's tax laws work. Their inheritance tax is absurdly high. So a lot of generational wealth in that country finds itself strapped for cash very quickly. His response is, sure, I will pay you a fee to rent your land, and you stay out of my way. I won't tell you what's going on. You don't need to know what's going on. We stay out of each other's way. You get to maintain your lifestyle and your living accommodations, and you don't bother me about what I do on your land. And then he digs underground and sets up his vast marijuana growing facilities. He's looking kind of to get out of the game because he's not averse to violence and is now married and approaching midlife, and he's kind of looking to sell his entire organization to actually another American. And they're kind of setting these negotiations up. I'll spoil kind of the ending here. The buyer in question doesn't want to pay the asking price of $400 million, and so conspires with a rival Chinese gang that trucks primarily in heroin to facilitate conditions whereby the price of the actual price of this business is lowered. So he first makes him a counteroffer that's much lower. Then there's a raid that takes place on one of his facilities, necessitating all of them to relocate and shut down and just driving down his general market value. That's somewhat loosely set against the backdrop of... Well, not the backdrop, but running concurrently to this, Mickey decides to help out one of his tenants, landlords, one of the royalty. Well, not royalty, just one of the lords. And rescue their daughter from a heroin den. So he dispatches Charlie Hunnam and some of his men to do that. They get her back. She winds up ODing anyway because, hey, ain't life a bitch. There's a little bit of a... But in the process of that, they inadvertently kill the only son of some powerful Russian oligarch who now kind of teams up with the Chinese gang to try and take Mickey down. It doesn't work, because of course it doesn't. We'll get into some of the specifics of scenes and whatnot in a little bit. Charlie Hunnam is saved by the best character in this entire movie, that being the coach played by Colin Farrell.
It's pronounced Fahouk. It goes Fahouk.
I love that.
Calm the Fahouk down.
I love that character so much. I have to talk about his introduction.
He's not my favorite character. My favorite character is actually Hugh Grant as Fletcher.
I was gonna say, like, he's my favorite character. I almost cut you off and said it's Hugh Grant. Come on.
Yeah, no, it. We were funny. We were having some fun with Who Are We in BoJack. Dude, the Hugh Grant Fletcher character is so good. I was like, wow. Like, so many of, like, my mannerisms and, like, you know, my way of dealing with people is a big part of that character. I was like, I could just watch this guy tell stories for 2 hours. He's so good.
Yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, any one of our individual podcasts is me as, you know, this kind of dour, straight-laced Charlie Hunnam hitman, and you being this somewhat grandiose investigative journalist.
Yep.
That whole narrative device was very familiar to my existence at the moment.
What if Mark and Robert were a movie?
I keep saying, get out of my house. And you keep, no, look, you gotta listen to what happens next, because I've got news. And then you take 40 minutes to get there. That's not news. I know this.
And peppering in the odd gay innuendo.
Yeah. Finding one of the bodies I keep in my freezer.
Perfect. Asking for a steak.
Yeah,
so good.
I would, to be fair, I don't think I would give you Wagyu beef.
It's alright.
Even if that was all I had left. But anyway, point being, our final little thing is, again, Matthew McConaughey is able to kill a bunch of the Chinese guys who are trying to take him over. He then avoids a hit job by the Russians as the coach's aspiring MMA fighters gun them down, hopefully trying to take out Pearson and absolve their coach of any of their problems. And again, we can talk about some of the interplay between characters and narratives in a bit. If you've seen a Guy Ritchie movie, you know there's a lot of stuff that weaves together, goes away, comes back. I mean, this is every Guy Ritchie movie ever, basically. And then at the very end of all things, Fletcher tries to... the part of the thing is Fletcher's trying to extort Mickey for $20 million. Because if he gets that, he will not sell the story of season and all the evidence he has against Mickey Pearson to the newspaper editor who hired him. But now that they know the newspaper editor hired him, they wind up blackmailing him. I love that scene so much.
What is with the British, by the way, and fucking pigs? Jesus.
It's just a cultural thing, I guess. I don't.
It's like between this and Black Mirror, I was like, what is going on here? Like, why that specific thing?
I couldn't tell you beyond that, but yeah, I love Colin Farrell's in that entire scene. We'll get to that in a minute, again in more detail. So that goes away. He tries to sell the right. Fletcher knows he's being set up now at this point. He escapes as the Russians attack. The Russians are put down. He would have got away with it if he didn't try to sell the rights to a movie based on this series of events to Miramax of London. Because then when he goes out to then try to head to the airport to get to Los Angeles to also try to sell the rights, he is intercepted by Charlie Hunnam, who is the hitman, basically. Fletcher is then driven off to be dealt with off-screen, and Matthew McConaughey and his lovely wife continue living their lives of crime that I'm sure end happily ever after. Because isn't that just how all organized crime stories end in real life?
Sure.
All right, again, a pure recitation of the plot is not going to do this movie justice. It's all about the style in which it's presented. So, Mark, how do we want to break this down? What do we want to tackle first?
Well, let's talk about... I mean, look, this movie is a very performance-driven picture. Because a lot of it... the plot of this thing is, it's the who's betraying who and who knows what and when did they know it kind of a thing. And so it takes you for a ride. Some of these things work when they're done. Some of them don't work. And I think largely the thing that holds them up is the performances by the actors. And from Matthew McConaughey on down, everybody here gives some form of excellent and or funny and or memorable performance. We talked a little bit about Hugh Grant as Fletcher, who, a lot, as Robert said, a lot of this is him weaving a narrative to Charlie Hunnam, who is Raymond Smith, and it doesn't work if those two don't have any like real chemistry in the scene, because it's a lot of one guy talking to another, but it isn't just like it isn't just a monologue. Hugh Grant is teasing him and kind of having a lot of fun with it. And I talked about like he throws out the odd gay innuendo. I love it when he calls him my love, which is something I tend to do, which I think is hilarious. I mean, I have to be comfortable enough to know the people I'm doing that with, but I've definitely thrown the odd my love out there with some of the folks I work with. And it's so funny the way he does it, because it's like, it's two dudes, right? My darling, my love, all that stuff. Oh, it's so good. But it's droplets of details, and you don't know how much Charlie Hunnam really knows, or how much he needs to know. So, and as things get revealed, I think the picture does a really good job of drawing you in. The rest of it is just kind of potatoes. As far as like any of the action sequences, there's a handful in there. They're fine. It's a competently made movie, though I think people have criticized the editing of it, which I'll let you talk about, because it didn't bother me as such, because I also know that that's Guy Ritchie's style. He kind of edits with a weed whacker. But you can get away with it if you do it well. You really have to be purposeful in your quick cut editing for it to come off okay. And either as an audience member, you can tolerate it, or you're going to hate it. I think this one does a great job of using the quick cuts to keep the narrative flowing and to give you something interesting to look at in this visual medium. I thought Matthew McConaughey at first was going to get on my nerves, as he can sometimes in some of his characters. But in terms of presenting a dramatic performance and creating a character, I thought he did a really good job with Mickey Pearson. His use of inflection and tone and intonation, the way he speaks, like I said, I thought was going to irritate me at first, but there's enough range in it that it doesn't wear out its welcome.
I think if he'd done the same, kind of pattern and pitch to his voice for the entire thing, I agree with you, it would have got old fairly quickly.
I'm thinking a lot about Daniel Craig and Knives Out, where had he done the same sort of Kentucky Fried accent at that level the entire time, it would have driven me nuts. But he changes it here and there depending on the situation, and it made it more interesting, and it was less grating.
Yeah, I agree.
Charlie Hunnam is Charlie Hunnam. He plays a heavy in this, and he spends a lot of his time sort of scowling at Hugh Grant.
Again, much as I think that the coach is the best character, if I had a spirit animal from this movie, it is Charlie Hunnam just being done with Fletcher as soon as he shows up in his house. Like, get out of here.
Yeah, they played off each other very well. Michelle Dockery plays a fine, badass woman.
Sure, she exists.
Yeah, she showed up on set. She was off book. She was fine. Another one, kind of in the same vein as Hugh Grant, who gives like a sort of an off gay performance, is Jeremy Strong as Matthew Berger. I can see where he would grate on other people's nerves. I found him utterly delightful. It's just there's something, because we watch a lot of these movies where they're like blockbuster action movies, and people are either speaking in a normal voice or they're doing hero voice. It's fun to watch a movie where people really craft characters, not just in their look and presentation, but also in how they speak, the words they choose, and I understand that's written by the screenplay writer, but still, there's something about creating the performance, creating the character through performance that McConaughey, Hugh Grant, Colin Farrell, and Jeremy Strong all excel in this movie. And that's kind of the star of this thing, is these very unique and interesting characters interacting with one another, and then occasionally somebody gets shot or thrown out a window. I'm going to take a breath here and kind of let you step in and talk about what you liked about this movie.
There's very little to actively dislike. I can appreciate the perspective that the editing for this is a little bit
off-putting.
I can see why it is. It's not to me.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I can tolerate... God help me. I'm happy to point out how badly, Michael Bay edits movies. Because I think the editing for the third act of Armageddon is accurately described as Michael Bay with his finger on the trigger of a machine gun. So I know that it is off-putting. I can see why it's off-putting. I can objectively go, okay, not great, but how much does it actually affect my ability to enjoy the movie? And in the case of this movie, or most Guy Ritchie movies, I just understand that it's part of the style, and it's usually done for deliberate effect. It's not done just because I don't know what else to do in the editing room, which I think is primarily what happens with Michael Bay. Just, all right, I'm gonna, channel my inner Jason Voorhees, and we're go with slashing. Here it's done for a deliberate effect, and I can go. So I'm more willing to kind of go along with it. I had this issue with Bohemian Rhapsody, which is a terribly edited movie most of the time. The quick cuts are they're fine when they are used to help represent the creative process, but the fact that they cut like 18 times more, maybe over just like a lunch meeting, the editing for that movie is really not good. And then in that case, again, sometimes it works for a deliberate effect, sometimes it's profoundly off-putting. Here, the majority of it is done for a deliberate effect, so I'm willing to go along with it, even though I can kind of understand some people maybe not it being off-putting. I think my favorite character from this is just the old, and it's more of an MMA coach than a boxing coach, but he's very clearly, in terms of characterization, Colin Farrell is riffing off the old boxing coach motif. He's got the right hat. He's got the right posture. His introduction is a bunch of teenage, kind of thuggy characters going into a sandwich shop and trying to cut in line against him, and he's just not having that. And then he proceeds to kind of smack the crap out of them. At the end of which one of them goes, "Hey, wait, are you the coach?" And that's all he's ever known as is the coach.
You know what I love about that scene is he's not just this wasn't like a ninja, fights a group of guys kind of a thing.
No, he is an experienced person who knows how to fight up against a bunch of kids, and he's actually doing some teaching. He blocks one of the guys trying to throw a knife at him, smacks him, he drops it. Boys, fighting's done up here, not with the fists.
Well, the other thing about
if you're gonna do it, do it.
The other thing about that, and where I was going with this, is at one point he's teasing them, and then he's like, "No, come on!" He's trying to not develop rapport necessarily, but it's one of these things where you've kind of said this about me in the past, and I was thinking about that as I watched this, about the way you engage with the world, where you're trying to elicit reaction. In different ways, and people do this in different ways. I'll use the word scutch. I tend to scutch people because I want a reaction. That's I want. That's how I interact with people. And he's teasing them. And he's like, "No, come on, give me some, give me some back." And the guy's like, "Fuck you," and he's like, "Ugh, yeah, boy, have I been there."
Yeah, he not only does he smacks the crap out of one of them, then goes to the other. No, and then he insults them, and then he looks at the next guy who's gonna go okay, now come on, We're working a dialogue here. Come on, you want to fight me? That's fine, but come on. You got to say something. You can't just... And his response is, yeah, just F you. And he goes, oh, God. I can't get any enjoyment out of this even. You're just ruining my day. And then proceeds to, again, smack him into a corner.
Yes, minus the smacking. Boy, is that the story of my life. Come on, give me. Let's have an exchange here. Let's have some back and forth. And I needle somebody, and they come back with just the worst. And like, oh, this was a bad mistake. This was a terrible error on my part, and I wish I hadn't started it. I think the worst is when like I'll tease somebody or whatever, or I'll needle them, and I just kind of want a rapid fire jostling, and I get a story, and by the end of it, I'm like, I wish I had never talked to you. Ugh.
Yeah, I completely understand that on so many levels. The other thing I like about him is that he is not really in the crime business.
Right.
But some of his kids, the people he trains, are kind of co-opted into raiding this weed house that belongs to Mickey Pearson. And the first thing who runs? He knows they've stolen somebody. He doesn't know who from. And the only advice he gets back is, well, as long as it wasn't Mickey Pearson, you're fine, because then you got a problem. And okay, coach, we figured out who we stole that weed from. Just tell me it's not Mickey Pearson. Oh, are you a gypsy now, coach? Like, oh, mother. So he goes to, and again, this is one of the things I like about the character. He actually goes to Charlie Hunnam's character, hat in hand, and goes, they're good kids. Didn't know it was yours. Didn't know what was up. I'm happy to return your product.
Yeah, I need to make amends.
Yeah, he's proactive about this. He doesn't try to hide it. He's like,
right.
Look, these are the type of people that I think our best bet here is a little bit of honesty.
Right.
And a little bit of contrition.
Throw yourself on their tender mercies and ask what you can do to, as I said before, make amends.
3, 2, 1. And yeah, I like that about his character. And then he doesn't want, and the other thing about this is he doesn't want to be, again, in the organized crime business. He wants to make amends for what happened, and he tells Charlie Hunnam kind of towards the end, like, I get that we wronged you, and I'm happy to make amends for that, but this is not permanent. This is a finite thing, and once we're done, we're done. And then at the end, he's able to finally kind of get there with what he kind of refers to as his fourth strike, when he saves Charlie Hunnam from a Russian hit team.
Yeah.
So I like the character. I like watching. Colin Farrell got a bad rap, even though it was somewhat deserved for a period of time, about his acting ability. But he's really a strong actor when you give him kind of something to sink his teeth into like this. So seeing him stretch those particular muscles is always a fun exercise, especially when it's such a deliberately colorful character.
I think he responds well to a strong director, because I think he has a lot of energy as an actor, but I think he's somebody who, when you just kind of let him run with it, he might take it into directions it doesn't need to go. But if you have a director that knows how to channel that energy, you can get outstanding performances out of him. I think he has raw ability that needs fine tuning and channeling.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So who else do we want to talk about?
Real quick, one of the things about this movie is, there's a tendency with this kind of movie, this kind of snappy dialogue, to do that, like, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Pop culture monologuing. Kind of just saying shit just to say shit and sound cool. That sometimes these movies are laden with.
Okay, yeah, I get what you're saying.
And this movie is, for a lot, there's a lot of dialogue. It's a very dialogue-driven movie. But there's no fat. Things are laid out, set up, paid off. the dialogue give and take, I think, needs to be... Like, I wouldn't cut anything from the heavy dialogue scenes. I mean, there's one or two jokes in there, but I don't think... Like, there was never a point in the movie where I was like, oh my god, get on with it. Nor was anyone just sort of monologuing and chewing scenery just for the sake of looking cool in front of the camera. Which, again, you tend to get with some of these movies. This was very straightforward.
It's all very much, again, dialogue, not monologue. Which is an important distinction, and one that, I think you're correct. A lot of movies can lose that distinction in execution. Probably my other favorite thing with the coach is after they drug the newspaper editor and then convince him to engage in bestiality. Because he meets Raymond at the end and goes, no, you don't want to look at that. You can't unsee it. And then, no, I've got to see them. I have to confirm, I don't want to watch all of it, but I have to confirm that, you've done your job. And Coach's response as the movie starts playing is just, it's not the pig I would have chosen. Which I thought was a great line.
So, the people who are, lighting up the screen, McConaughey, Jeremy Strong, Colin Farrell, Hugh Grant. Then you have characters, actors, who are not exactly... they give good performance, but it's more, they're kind of the straight men throughout a lot of this. So you have Charlie Hunnam, who's, like I said, does a lot of scowling, and he's the heavy for Matthew McConaughey, and he's sort of straight to the point, even when he has his big scene when he goes after the daughter.
I love that scene so much because there's an element of... we mentioned that there's... I imagine there's some very real stuff about these characters that were essentially ad-libbed by the actors. And then that was kind of woven into how certain scenes played out. So the fact that Charlie Hunnam's character is a bit of a germaphobe. It's not debilitating, it's not played for laughs, but when McConaughey sends him out to, we're going to go get this girl, he's like, I hate smack dens, boss. I can't stand the grime. Or, the way he insists that Fletcher take his shoes off when he goes in the house. There's just these... I am almost entirely positive that was not written by whoever wrote the movie. There's some subtle nods to this guy being a germaphobe in there. That's probably something that Charlie Hunnam just went, okay, let's add a little bit of life to the character because he is very much a straight man.
Well, like I said, in that scene, this isn't John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson doing the big Kahuna Burger read from the Bible bit in Pulp Fiction. Their interactions with the character are to sort of establish dominance, let them know how things are going to go, give the characters a chance to cooperate so it doesn't end in bloodshed, and then, it all just goes to hell as it often does. But he's very, straightforward and to the point. And that's why I brought that up, because, if everybody is sort of a circus character, I don't think this movie works as well. So you have... excuse me. So you have these characters that are very, hot, very full of life and sort of outrageous performances being balanced out by the Charlie Hunnam character. And then I was going to get to Dry Eye, played by Henry Golding, who isn't really doing a character. I mean, he's acting. Don't get me wrong, he's acting fine. But I would not... There are no outstanding characteristics to his performance. Michelle Dockery, really. Again, is just the gal. And I think that's it as far as, the main cast. So,
I think the last thing I wanted to touch on from Hunnam's performance is because he doesn't get a lot... He's not playing, again, an over-the-top, and I don't mean that in a bad way. He's not flamboyant. But a lot of what he does then winds up kind of relying on his timing as an actor, and how this is properly edited together. And the scene where he's, again, after they've rescued the daughter and one guy gets thrown out a window. So they have to go collect all the cell phones from the 3 to 4, small, younger kids who were just around them at the time it happened because they don't want evidence. And he chases one of them all the way back to where a bunch of his other friends are, and there's a bunch of them now, and he says, "Look, kid, I'm not trying to steal your cell phone. I'll buy it from you." Pulls out a wad of cash and is very clearly just like trying to end this peacefully. And the what would be the Fagin, the guy who's kind of in charge of this little group of hoodlums, goes, "How about you just leave the money and then you leave on your own, and we won't hurt you." And then Charlie Hunnam, who's clearly had enough of this, there's this wonderful little half beat when he goes, "Fine," pulls out a machine gun, fires at, doesn't hit anybody, he just fires it to let them know, no, this is how it's going to go, and then points it at this last kid like, "Nope, stop it, drop the phone." And this is very much a movie about the counterbalance between the large and the dramatic with kind of the more subtle approaches. You have McConaughey's character who, in some scenes, is very much the flamboyant, I wouldn't say overacting necessarily, but definitely acting out loud. And then there's other scenes where he is more subdued in a good way. I mean, that final scene with him and the guy who's trying to buy his business,
Jeremy Strong, is Matthew Berger.
Yeah, he starts very calm and says, you're going to pay me essentially the depreciation value on my business that you forced it into, and I'm not emotional about this. I'm not mad about the money. I kind of understand where you're coming from." And then he just kind of slowly ramps up to, "But this guy put his hands on my wife, and for that I'm going to need a pound of your flesh." So you get a lot of that kind of back and forth play about knowing when to dial things up, when to dial them back from all parties in this. I mean, even Charlie Hunnam's more straight-laced character has that one moment at the end when he abducts Fletcher, when he puts on that same kind of stupid Spanish accent that Fletcher was using on him when they started their first scene. So, again, finding that give and take, that's a really kind of important part of this movie and how it plays when it is successful.
So I don't think you didn't like or didn't work for you, because I think for me, I mean, I talked about the editing, but the editing didn't bother me. I don't have a tremendous amount of complaints here. I mean, I don't know. The guys dancing in the video probably goes a little too long if I had to pick something.
Yeah, that goes long, and I think this is more of a... If there was something in this movie that didn't work for me, if that's kind of the qualification here, this is a Guy Ritchie movie through and through, and that kind of means that if you've seen one of his movies, you've seen them all in a very real way.
Well, let's take away the Guy Ritchie thing for a second. In terms of snappy gangster picks, because I was thinking about this as we were talking about it. This isn't particularly brutal. Like, the violence really is kept to a minimum.
And most of it happens. Most of it happens almost like off screen.
Yeah.
And in that you are watching a scene wherein violence occurs, but the camera is looking at something other than the source of the violence.
So, like, you compare it to, like, Casino, which is brutal at times. And I don't know. I mean, it jumped out at me as one of the more, like, brutal gangster pictures that I can remember. Where I can remember the details of it if I had to speak, shot for shot. Where this is, like I said, it's a gangster picture, but it's not particularly brutal. It's not particularly violent. It's witty. And I think the draw is in the mystery, as opposed to the abject violence of mob life. And so, was it successful in being that for you?
Yeah, again, it's an effectively witty film, which, fair play. Again, I think the stuff that doesn't work for me is just, even if I didn't know this was directed by Guy Ritchie, after, 2 scenes, it's very, very obvious this is a Guy Ritchie movie. Did you think... And that has pluses and negatives, and some of the... I just ran into, I think, a little bit of the kind of drawbacks to that, just in the sense that I now know what's coming. Even if I don't know, the particular story, I know what's coming next, kind of thing.
Did you think Matthew McConaughey was dead at the beginning of the film?
No, because again, Guy Ritchie. He's not. He doesn't usually kill those characters like that. It would have been more interesting to me if he were, but you would have had to tweak big portions of how the other bits of the story went. So I understand it, and it's an effective fake out if you're not really thinking about it on a meta level.
Right. Was there anything in the movie where you were like, because you tend to read into? I went along for the ride, tabula rosa, just kind of let it tell me the story. I don't need to. Oh, I can see where this is going, kind of a thing. I don't enjoy movies that way. I don't feel the need to perseverate on details and try to outwit the movie before it ends. But you process things differently and faster than I do when it comes to this stuff. You're a very bright guy, obviously. So I'm curious to see if any of it got you, where you were like legit surprised.
Legitimately surprised?
Like you didn't see that coming, or you had forgotten that something had been set up earlier in the movie and then pays off later.
I don't think so. Which, again, this is not me trying to be, smarter than the average bear. I just think that this is not a movie that has a tremendous amount of surprise kind of baked into it. I think I think
I'd forgotten about the Russians. That was the one thing. When they came back up again, I was like, oh yeah, they're out there.
Because that didn't get to me. That didn't get me, so to speak. I was just waiting for that to pay. I kind of figured that was going to pay off once, because there's a scene where Fletcher is like looking at one of those guys, like, okay, so that's what they're doing. And there's also that scene where Dry Eye is like told by somebody in the shadow of a car that you're the boss now. Like, oh no, he's got a Russian accent. Like, that's clearly not the Chinese triad giving him their blessing.
What did you think of the scene where he poisons Lord George?
It's a good scene.
If the vomit got you at all.
I'm not. Come on, Mark.
Well, no,
I'm not that guy.
No, hang on. Not got you like you're squeamish and you're like, well, got you like, were you? It's a graphic scene. It's one of the more graphic scenes in the movie, and I'll be the first to say, I didn't look away or anything. I actually thought it was comical. The way that it was done.
Yeah, the fact that it goes the way that it does kind of give you a little bit of comedic undertones to how it plays. I think that works in its favor.
I was just wondering if you were shocked. Like, huh?
Nah.
It's rare you see it's rare you see projectile vomiting in film.
They also set that up earlier with that scene of the guy putting stuff in the tea, so you knew something was coming. Okay. Was like, oh, the choice of projectile vomit. Like, if Quentin Tarantino had a vomit fetish instead of a blood fetish, then okay, wow. Again, not what I was expecting, but not really, out of left field.
If you were producing this, and the story is a reporter narrates our story to a mob henchman, and then eventually it'll wrap up and the third act is non-narrated. Do you keep the narration, or do you do away with it and play it a little bit more straight?
I keep the narration. Again, like, if this is just like in the dark, it might be a little bit more of a tough sell, but knowing the players involved, no, the narration is kind of what helps make this thing work.
Agreed. I was just curious, there's some people who might argue that there are silly scenes that are embellishes, and they're fun, and it makes the movie a little bit more dynamic and interesting. But there's an argument to cut that stuff and just be a little bit more straight with it.
I appreciate the argument, and there are films wherein I think that's the right way to go. this is not that. This is just about knowing the film and knowing the players involved with what's going to be going. Again, who's an idiot in film? Hang on. What's his face? If Brett Ratner says, I want to make a movie that features heavy narration, like, no. First of all, I'm not letting you make movies anyway because I hate you. But this is so very clearly not to your strong suit as a filmmaker that we're just not going to touch that with a 20-foot pole. Because we're dealing with Guy Ritchie, where, the breaking of the timeline and the witty dialogue and the little bit of like, oh, I got you a little bit there, didn't I? That's an inherent part of what makes his movies work. And consequently, again, you kind of need that. Are there directors I wouldn't trust with this style of filmmaking and whatnot? Absolutely. There's a lot of them. I would trust Guy Ritchie with it. So, for whatever that's worth.
Okay. Anything else? If not, we're going to go on to the money.
No, let's go on. Did you get up? Did you mash up the theme I asked for?
Sorry, no.
Oh, missed opportunity. Okay, don't worry about it.
I suck. I'm sorry.
You don't suck. You're busy. For those of you who don't know, the request I made was to mash up the beginning of Here Comes the Money with the funeral dirge The Undertaker uses.
All right, here we go. Here comes the money.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, 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 money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
All right, well, we do have some good news. On a budget of a mere $22 million, this thing has already made $117.8 million as of this recording. So it was wildly profitable. Good job there for STX, which is one of the smaller film studios. Tends to do a lot of releases like this. I'm trying to think. I think STX was responsible for the Bad Moms movies and stuff like that. Here, just a quick list of the last couple of STX films. Hustlers was one. Okay, so a lot of these did not do very well.
Well, again, you're a smaller studio in this case, so you're going to do a lot of smaller budget stuff, and you're just going to kind of operate under the mathematical principle that most of these are going to do small losses, and then you're going to find one or two that are going to do enough profit numbers to justify the kind of generalized strategy behind it. And again, to be fair, it does tend to work.
I could have sworn STX was responsible for the Hunger Games, but that does not appear.
That's Lionsgate.
That was close. So just the last couple, they've done most recently Brahms the Boy, to Playmobil, 21 Bridges, Countdown, Hustlers, Palms, Ugly Dolls, The Best of Enemies, The Upside, Second Act, Peppermint, The Happy Time Murders, which is one of my favorite movies of 2018, Mile 22, Adrift, I Feel Pretty, Gringo, Den of Thieves. That's just the last 2 years. Like I said, so on the upside, they did the Bad Moms movies, which did really well, and to the point where they did a sequel. On the downside, they're responsible for Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets, which, oof, God. It grossed.
Yeah, that was a miss.
Its budget was around $200 million, and that's about how much it made. Ugh. They tried.
You can't throw that kind of money at a director whose product appeals to a very niche audience. I might on some levels I'm part of that niche audience. Besson is one of those directors that I like, but when you're trying to promote your movie by saying from the director of Leon the Professional and The Fifth Element, you are so wildly limiting your audience. I know people love The Fifth Element. I don't know why. I don't dislike it, but I never got the people who were like, boy, this is a visionary masterpiece. Like, I don't get that at all.
So Countdown, which was the horror movie, that actually was really profitable for them. They made that on a budget of $7 million, and it made almost 50. So that did well. A lot of the stuff in between The Gentleman and Countdown. Playmobil lost shit tons of money. 21 Bridges did not do great. Let's see how well Hustlers did. Hustlers actually did really well on a budget of 20.
Hustlers was a surprise hit.
On a budget of $20 million, it made almost $160 million. So, like I said, Hustlers is kind of hit and miss, but they're not like an embarrassing studio.
No, not at all. You just know what you're getting into when you go see a movie that they've produced.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if you know this or not, but shortly...
Go ahead. Go ahead, say it.
Shortly after this film came out, the theater shut down. So
come on, you know what you want to say, just say it.
What do I want to say?
You want to say the world ended.
Oh, yeah. Shortly after the world ended.
Certainly after this movie came out, the world ended.
Yeah. So, there's no point in doing weekend box offices because of what weekend. But I can tell you where we are. It's so funny, because like you think about Mulan, Black Widow, Fast 9, all these movies that were about to just take over the box office. But they've all been pushed back. They may be coming VOD, which, by the way, so we're going to use this. We're going to use this segment to kind of talk about where we are in film right now. We have to address, and I don't know if you saw this or not, but Universal just kind of threw its hands up and said, "Fuck it, we'll just release everything on VOD." And these were movies that had already come out, like The Hunt, for example. Which you were like, "Well, why don't we talk about more of these other movies?" Do you want to talk about The Hunt? Because I didn't think you did.
I most certain. Look, I've seen some people react to The Hunt, and I've seen a few of them go, "Oh, this is a funny movie," and here's my take about this. And to be fair, I have not seen it, so this is my assumptions. That movie is not smart enough to be as funny as it wants to be. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of its pivot towards the comedy side of things was done in the editing room after they realized how badly this would play if they tried to do it straight.
It's largely a satire. It's a lot of it's played for laughs, and it's very much turn your brain off funny. Like I was entertained by it, and before you make your condescending jiggling keys remark about what entertains me, I think I saw this around the same weekend that everything got shut down. I needed a good laugh. It was fine.
I mean, look, yes, you're entertained by jingling keys. You are the people of Quahog.
Give him hell, Quimby.
No, that's Springfield.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter because the gag in this one is that Mayor Adam West, who blunders and then has to distract the electorate with something, and he's going down a list of...
Did he actually do jingling keys? Because I don't remember.
Yes! That. He leans out the... jingle keys. That'll work. He leans out the window and jingles his keys at the protesters outside of the house.
Perfect.
One of them throws a brick, it hits him in the face, his nose gets all bloody, he reaches up, grabs at it, pulls back, sees the blood, and goes, "Dear God, I'm a tomato."
I vaguely remember that now. I remember the tomato line. Anyway,
it's the gay marriage episode, because that's what he goes to after jingling keys doesn't work.
Oh, yeah, it's one of the early ones. Anyway, the point being, back to worldwide box office. So, the worldwide box office is kind of at a standstill, and it's given, like... it's an anemic worldwide top 10, but it's given movies that would have never have made the top 10 at this point. Like...
Anemic is a charitable description, for the record.
I mean, Bad Boys for Life is your number one movie worldwide with $425 million.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Followed by Sonic. Yeah, that doesn't crack the top 10 from 2019. Where I think...
hang on, no, that doesn't crack the top 10 of any year for the last, 3 years.
Hang on, because I want to say 2018 maybe might have had a movie in the 700 or 800 range.
We can find out.
I'm looking. 2018, So, yeah, okay, so actually half of it. The first 5 all made $1 billion, or 2. The second half, Bohemian Rhapsody, Venom, Mission Impossible, Deadpool, and Fantastic Beast, all made between $600 and $1 billion. Bohemian Rhapsody topped out at $900 billion. 900 million, Jesus.
I know what you meant. It's okay.
2019. Yeah, okay. Jumanji cracked the top 10 at 796, narrowly beating out Hobbs and Shaw. Like,
point being, this thing would be lucky to. I mean, here's the other thing about that: it wouldn't make the money that it's made if it were released in any of those years.
At 425 million in 2019, it just knocks out The Captain in the top 20 at number 20.
Yeah, it's such a nothing number when you look at worldwide box office totals. Hey, we made 400 million. Well, you know, if you were an independent movie, hell yeah, good for you.
2017, and this will be the last one I do. 2017, the top 10 was Wonder Woman at $821 million. If it had been released that year, yeah, it doesn't even crack the top 20.
Yeah, it's, again, anemic is charitable to describe the state of the box office right now. And
in second place is Sonic the Hedgehog with a $300 million tag. Doolittle.
Now, again, really, that and like Sonic and Doolittle being numbers 2 and 3 is your real damning indictment of the box office right now.
Birds of Prey at 200 million at 4. The Invisible Man.
Okay, hang on. Can we talk for just a minute about how badly Birds of Prey flopped?
Sure.
Like we talked a little bit about this when we reviewed it because the weekend box office returns were meh. I mean, they weren't great. They weren't what was expected, but that thing had like no second or third life. You know, sometimes you get something that's got a ho-hum week, but it doesn't drop off a whole lot for like 3 weeks. So sure, it only debuts with, 50 million. I know that's not what it did, but for the sake of argument. But for the next 3 weeks, you go from 50 to, 43 to 39. Small drops.
So this thing had a budget of $85 million, and it topped out at $200 million. So technically it's profitable. Technically.
There's no way that budget is accurate. I mean, look, I have no problem believing that's about all they spent on the filmmaking. When you factor in the advertising they put behind that, at all is that only... No. That thing, if it made its budget, if it broke even, basically, it was barely.
So if you take, I checked out the Wikipedia. They have the high end at 100 million. So let's go with that. To date, it's made 201 million. So like, if you
barely,
it barely broke even, and it's the lowest grossing of the DC movies. And it's a failure across the board. You can slice this any way you want, but this was...
I would like to slice it across the neck then, and just kill it.
This was largely a miss by the studio and an embarrassment all around for all parties involved. And again, I say to Margot Robbie, Harley Quinn has friends. You should have done Gotham City Sirens, and if you had planned to do the Gotham City Sirens, you should have done it first. Not Birds of Prey. The right order to have done this was Gotham City Sirens, then Birds of Prey, then whatever fuck show you wanted to do in the third one, since you were going for the Harley Quinn trilogy.
The third one would have just been another Mad Love retelling where she gets back together with the Joker, because nothing changes.
Yeah. So you have The Invisible Man at 124 million, which was, I believe, largely successful and now currently on VOD.
Good on that movie overperforming.
Yeah, it had a budget of $7 million.
Yeah, properly budget your low budget horror movies. and let them make you money. That's why they exist.
Okay, the gentleman we've already talked about was successful. The Call of the Wild is currently at number 7 with 107 million. I don't even think this would be in the top 30 if we were in a normal year.
Jesus
Christ.
It already would have been way gone.
This thing's budget is 135 million.
You'd think they could have made a more realistic St. Bernard for that price.
They should have just released this on Disney Plus. Good God, this is embarrassing.
Can we talk about that for just a second?
We can talk about anything you want. It's half your podcast.
Disney Plus is struggling to retain subscribers.
I know.
So they have a fair amount of content, but I mean, you're rolling out an on-demand streaming service in an era when everybody and their dog is trying to get in on this racket, and you're the biggest entertainment company in the history of humanity, and you're not ready to roll out, even in your first year, if you want to take things a little bit slower, you're going to tell me you can't have 6. Let's go. You can't have 6 exclusive Disney Plus exclusive properties ready to go.
Well,
I mean, you had The Mandalorian, and some people like it. Fair enough.
Hang on. On its debut, there were 2 things that got released, like the day that the day that the service went online. You had The Mandalorian, which episodes 1 and 2 I think went up at the same time, and then you had the live-action Lady and the Tramp. 2 vastly different audiences. I think since then, there has been some stuff that they've done, but like Stargirl, and to be clear, not the CW Stargirl, but a different whole other thing, that was exclusive to that service. But I have no idea what that is, or how you would know about it as unless you were looking for it. I'd have to pull up the... Go ahead and jump in here. Because here's the thing. Jesse and I did talk about this. How they didn't have a Marvel show ready to go in January is beyond me. I'll let you tag in.
No, I completely agree with that. They needed something that they could just keep rolling with whatever momentum The Mandalorian built. Instead, we've got a lot of nothing up until whenever like Wanda and the Vision come out.
So, November 12th, we had 2 series drop on the same day, the day that it premiered. High School Musical, the series.
Oh, bite me.
Okay, but you're also not a girl.
I know, I'm just saying... Okay, okay, I am not a teenage girl. Fair enough.
Or a tween girl.
Whatever. Is anyone in 2020 or 2019 excited about the High School Musical intellectual property? Anybody.
Okay. I think my daughter watches it. I wouldn't call her excited.
Okay, so the answer then is essentially nobody if we're talking about if you're, and I mean this, I don't mean this as a slight to your daughter, but if your daughter is lukewarm on this IP, no one is really excited about it.
And then on January 17th, and this is it for scripted series, by the way, and this is the crux of our conversation right now and our big complaint, is that the rollout for Disney Plus was High School Musical, The Mandalorian, and Diary of a Future President.
And boy, was that a colossal failure.
Nothing Marvel. I mean, you have non-scripted series, but who the fuck's watching this stuff? Like, there's a docu-series called Marvel's Hero Project. Who gives a shit? I know there were people on Twitter that were like, oh my god, the world according to Jeff Goldblum. These are the people who I was talking about earlier who I want to punch in the face as I'm trudging off to work when I read their shit on Twitter. As of this recording, and today is March 30th, the cooking reality competition show Be Our Chef has dropped. Sure. Shop Class.
You know what? They are taking the same approach with this that they take with Disneyland. Which is, we'll throw up a new ride, and if it doesn't work out, we'll remodel.
Here was a big one. February 21st, the 7th season of The Clone Wars dropped.
Yeah, okay, that was a fairly large one. I know people that really like that show.
And then The Legend of the Three Caballeros, which was from Brazil, which we'll be talking about later this year. That appeared on the network. That had already aired in Brazil. It was just sort of, they shuffled it off to Disney Plus. On February 28th, we had 101 Dalmatian Street and Marvel Future Avengers, which is an anime. Again,
It's an anime. I'm not going to get into that discussion with you. It's a point. No, I agree. They really feel like they rushed when they wanted to get this out, because if they'd waited to have, why isn't the Loki series, I don't like Loki as a character all that much.
Well, no, they should have had Falcon when they launched Disney Plus. They should have had Falcon and the Winter Soldier ready to go in January, with WandaVision ready to go by March or April.
Yeah,
they should have been fucking done already.
They needed one of those 3 big properties to be ready to go in the tank, and let's just hit this.
So, by the way, now look, this doesn't have to be a series. You could watch movies. So, November 12th, with the Christmas season, Mom's Cooking Dinner and Collard Greens. You had Lady and the Tramp, which is kind of a holiday movie. But you had Noelle. Huh? Noelle?
I don't know what that is.
It was another Christmas movie. Then there's Togo, which was released on December 20th. Timmy Failure on February 7th. And Stargirl, the aforementioned Stargirl. I think it's based on a novel.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Stargirl. An American musical romantic drama based on the novel of the same name by Jerry Spinelli. Terrific.
Spinelli is a name I at least know.
So, okay. So, what we're saying here is... So, their next film, their next upcoming original film, will premiere in summer 2020. And their big anchor here... Phineas and Ferb, the movie, Candace Against the Universe.
Yeah, this is so wildly mismanaged, it's almost comical.
So, where are we going with all this? Well, you've indefinitely postponed Mulan, The New Mutants, and Black Widow. I can think of at least one of those that should have gone immediately to video on demand.
New Mutants!
I mean, maybe Black Widow, if you're willing to eat what would have probably made between $750 and $1 billion.
That seems fine.
Look, take the pandemic out, and this is just a normal year. Marvel still has... This isn't Star Wars. Marvel still has tons of good faith coming out of Endgame and Spider-Man.
Hang on. I'm aware of that. I'm also saying Marvel's had some of their stuff that hasn't hit all that big.
I think this one would have been fine.
I'm not saying bad. I'm saying $750 to $1 billion is probably high. You're probably looking more...
Well, again, Wonder Woman, $800 million, and she's basically the Wonder Woman of Marvel.
People were also really asking for Wonder Woman.
They were also asking for Black Widow.
I know people have been saying that, but I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing this one hit that big. I suppose is kind of where I am on that. Sure. That's not Marvel's not going to lose money on anything they do for the next 8 years. Like it almost. Again, you have to be kind of careful with that because you can't be a giant moron. But again, like anything that Marvel has even potentially in the pipeline, like what's Marvel's biggest failure to date?
Thor: The Dark World. You're talking financially?
However you want to style it, financially, critically, like.
Well, those are two
I will let you
different conversations.
Okay, no. I'm saying I will let you define the terms here. I'm saying what's Marvel's last big failure because I know what I consider it to be.
Okay, we're gonna base this completely on financial. Excuse me. We're going to base this completely on finance. 'Cause I think it's the only way you can judge it. Because we're not doing a critical analysis here. we're doing how successful was this damn thing. So,
Okay. My answer does not change, by the way.
it's The Incredible Hulk.
It's not.
Worldwide, it made the least money, $264 million.
Mark, don't make me say it.
Nobody cares about The Incredible Hulk.
Partially. Well, look, I seriously debate whether or not The Incredible Hulk as a film property should be included in the discussion. However, even if I give you that, it's still not The Incredible Hulk.
Okay, well then the next one is Captain America: The First Avenger, which only made $370 million.
It's not Captain America.
Oh my God, what is your point? When I've said now 9 times, we're only basing this on worldwide totals. But go ahead.
Okay. A feature cinema event put on by Marvel Studios. So this was released in theaters, so it qualifies.
Oh.
Do you remember the Inhumans?
Okay, I'm not
Because
gonna
I
do
do. You made me see it.
that. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. Not counting the Inhumans.
No, we're counting the Inhumans.
Fine. Counting the Inhumans, yes, that is its worst failure. But for the rest of us people, it's The Incredible Hulk.
No, you are part of this discussion. You saw it too.
All right, stop punishing me. Jesus.
No, you made me watch that movie. I'm going to remind you that we suffered. I will not
Okay.
let you live in denial about
When you're
this.
done crying like a baby about it, we can get back to the central discussion here of, at its worst, in its first year of doing this, its worst movie was The Incredible Hulk at $264 million on it. Well, they lost money on that. That was a $300 million. That was a $150 million budget
Okay, Mark, do you know why I say no one cares about the Incredible Hulk?
because nobody cares about The Incredible Hulk.
Because nobody cares about the Incredible Hulk.
Um,
I don't say it to needle you. It's a nice byproduct of it being the truth.
but Captain America did okay. I mean, it made more than twice its budget. Thor made more than twice its budget. Ant-Man did almost $20 million. That one was fine. The first Iron Man did fine.
I think
And then
if we
just
get
goes
it,
up from there.
well, it goes up. But again, I think if we discuss about what were their biggest failures and misreads. Again, if we set aside the Inhumans, which should never have existed in that form, just straight up never. We're probably looking at, again, you can argue Dark World. I think Dark World kind of got by again based on the reputation from the original, from the first Thor, and from Marvel kind of riding high as a general studio at that time. I think if you're talking about failures after that, you're not talking about abject failures. You're talking about stuff that was kind of instead of great. At which point we just get into Ant-Man and the Wasp, both of which are just kind of
I mean, I don't know. Here's the thing. And so...
Well, anyway, point being, they're not going to lose money. But I think if I'm going to lay out a personal projection for Black Widow, even before the pandemic, it would have been, I would have probably figured more Ant-Man and Wasp than Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay. That's one where we're split. I don't see it that way. I see this as, Marvel's Goodwill Wonder Woman. So that's where I'm getting 750 to just over $1 billion. I don't think it does I don't think it does high billions, but whatever. We'll never know at this point because we don't have no idea when this thing is going to come out or what the state of the world is going to be in when it does. But if you're Disney, and this is the point of this discussion, this sort of mental exercise that we're doing, do you just bite it and go, fuck it? People aren't living the... And this is what I was getting to. Like, Matchroom Boxing just announced today, they've rescheduled all their May cards. So, like, Dylan White versus Alexander Povetkin, that got pushed to July 4th. Usyk versus Shmagegi, that's postponed indefinitely. And then there was another one that I wasn't tracking that got pushed off to, I think, July 11th. Which tells me that they're expecting social distancing to be done with by June.
Which, in fairness, is kind of in line with most projections with most revised projections right now. It's end of May, start of June.
So, if that's the case, Marvel didn't have a date set for Let me look up the calendar real quick. Marvel didn't have any dates set for June or July. However, kind of looking at the Wonder Woman just gave up its date for, I think it was June 5th. Theoretically, they could put it there, since it has zero competition. The following week is Candyman, the week after that is Soul, and the week after that is Top Gun, if they want to do it in June. If they wanted to do it in July, I don't think there's anything July 3rd, Independence Day weekend, at least not on my calendar. I mean, the following week is Ghostbusters, then Tenet, then Jungle Cruise. I know somewhere in June, I think it is. Let me look at the date real quick. Is Artemis Fowl. Nobody gives a shit. Just, let's go ahead and say that. Like, you know, this is one of those movies where, okay, it's set for release May 29th. Here's a thought, Disney. I'm just going to throw this out there. Put Artemis Fowl on Disney Plus and give that date to Black Widow. May 29th. It'll be fine.
It won't. Yeah, I was a little bit surprised when I saw them go with Artemis Fowl's not really a property that I would have been banking on if I'm looking around at young adult
because
kind of properties that you want to bet on.
They've done so well with these fucking novel adaptations, or other like science fiction. Hey, Tomorrowland was a big hit.
No, it wasn't. No, I get what you're saying. I mean, that said, if you look at what were the big, what are the gigantic film franchises if we exclude Marvel from them from over the last 10 years. It's Harry Potter and the Hunger Games.
Right now,
which was not the epic crossover we all wanted, by the way.
All right, so if they wait till June, like I said, there's nothing the first week of June. Warner Brothers gave up their spot for Wonder Woman. That was supposed to be June 5th. So I would take that. Right now, there's nothing on the calendar for June 5th. And you figure people will be out by then. People will be looking for stuff to do. They'll be wanting to get out of their house. Take that. Then
again, this is assuming that the predictive models right now are correct, which is not a given.
If you want to wait, the other option, like if you go out till July.
I mean, the Olympics just got pushed to 2021.
There's July 10th. There's Universal's The Purge 5. You could go up against that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of overlap in audiences there. That'd be a pretty safe.
July 17th is Tenet and Bob's Burgers. I wouldn't do that. You can kick Jungle Cruise out of its spot and take that date if you wanted.
You don't want to anchor The Rock.
If you go into August, you've got some. I mean, a lot of stuff is landing in August right now. You've got Wonder Woman, which I wouldn't want to put Black Widow up against Wonder Woman. I think that's a lose-lose.
Do it. I think you do it. You split the box office and you undercut DC because you can afford the loss.
Okay, and piss off women in Hollywood worldwide and make a bunch of make a bunch of people angry. Go on YouTube. Fucking putting up videos. I can't handle it. No. Look. A bunch of people got angry and put up videos about Ghostbusters after it bombed. Like, how dare you buy into this misogynistic crap? No, the movie just sucked. Deal with it. The other option, if you're looking for good dates, is you can kick Eternals out of their spot, which is November 6th, which is where a lot of stuff landed. You have the Eternals, you have Godzilla vs. Kong, No Time to Die, Raya and the Last Dragon. The other option, and here's the thing, December fucking sucks this year.
Hang on. To be fair, a bunch of stuff is going to land there now.
I mean, just let me...
right now it's a wasteland. In 3 months, boy howdy is that going to be hot.
So let me just read off this list here. Samaritan, which is the Sylvester Stallone movie. Dune, West Side Story, Coming to America, Tom and Jerry, The Croods 2, The Tomorrow War, The Last Duel, Respect, News of the World, The Nightingale, and finally on December 30th, Escape Room 2.
Yep, that all sucks. And you're gonna have me, you're gonna make me review at least half of those.
No, only Dune. Yeah, only Dune. I roped Alexis into Tom and Jerry. I gave you that one off because I did not want to hear you whine. There's nothing on the fucking throw it at Christmas. Make it a Christmas movie or move Eternals to Christmas.
If I were gonna do that, if I were Disney, because Christmas is, believe it or not, a pretty big movie holiday. Which might sound weird, but everyone after they're done opening presents still wants to do stuff as a family. It's find a movie. Black Widow's a much more known commodity.
Hey, hang on, I got breaking news. Peter Rabbit 2: The Runaway got kicked out of its August spot again, and is now in January 15th of 2021.
Here I would have thought, look, I was just really hoping you were going to say it was kicked out of existence.
Oh shit! Ghostbusters moved to March 5th of 2021.
Yep.
Huh.
I was looking forward to that one, actually. That kind of sucks.
Oh, shit. What? I didn't even... Wait, was it on the... Did I just blow right past it? Yeah. Shit, it's off the July calendar. God damn it. Well, hang on. Time for editing. Ghostbusters, March 5th. Da-da-da-da-da. I have to do this right now, in case you're wondering.
Hey, Mark, did you know it's WrestleMania weekend, and it's the WrestleMania that's totally too big for one night?
Go fuck yourself. Oh, I was on Larry's podcast. I did a 20-minute bit on that, how much I fucking hate this company.
I will need to look that up, actually. I tend to catch Larry's podcast kind of intermittently. They're good, but my interest in pro wrestling is intermittent, so I intermittently look up topics or weeks that I am interested in.
Well, we previewed WrestleMania, and I said, while we're previewing this, I need to ask you, who do you think is the more tone-deaf company, the UFC or the WWE? And that was a good, like I said, 20-minute discussion.
Which of those is more tone-deaf? WWE, by far. That is a company that actively acts in contravention of the audience demands.
Oh, Jesus, Morbius moved, too!
Yep. How are you? Okay, we have now reached the stage where Mark is once again depressed and apoplectic.
Why? Why is this happening to me?
Okay, hold on. Just full stop for just a second. You have no stake in any of this. You don't get to go, why is this happening to me? You get to go, oh, this is a thing that's happening.
No, this is vandals, Robert Winfree. Vandals are destroying my calendar. Don't you understand?
Yes, because the entire global pandemic was designed around screwing with your calendar.
Yes, I believe this is you, once again, screwing with things because I turned your hobby into a nightmare of recording.
Dude, first of all, I totally would. If I could.
This is depressing. Vandals.
Alright, so, what else anything else you want to look at and see that it's moved?
Well, let's see. So let's look at this again. So yeah, Peter Rabbit moved. Let's see here. No, that's still the same. Ghostbusters moved. Morbius moved. Oof. God. March 19th. Currently, Morbius, Luck, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, Tomb Raider, and Paranormal Activity. No, everything looks largely intact for now. This week. Alright, I think we're good here. Anyway, all of this to say there are options with Black Widow. Apparently, moving things to next year is the thing to do.
It's probably, in all honesty, it's probably the safest bet. I mean, if you announce it for a date in 2020 and then you have to move it again, I mean, that seems like not only bad optics, but you're going to have to pay everyone again. Like, movie release dates like this, part of the reason they're not more fluid than they are is you're committing to the theaters in question that you will provide a service to them. Failure to do so means you generally have to compensate them in some way. Like, you can't. These aren't free moves. So if they take a date in 2020 and then have to move it again, that's just kind of a bad thing.
So here's my thought: move Mulan to December 25th. It has nothing. I mean, there's a lot happening on December 25th, but the only thing that would be competing against itself would be The Last Duel, which nobody going to see The Last Duel would have gone to see Mulan. So I think that's what you do with Mulan. Save that one for December 25th, big Christmas release. Hopefully by then people will be oot and boot. Maybe put Black Widow in the Eternal spot, and then move Eternals to just kind of shift everything up. Move Eternals to where Shang-Chi is, move Shang-Chi to where Doctor Strange is, because I think Doctor Strange might need more time now, especially since they lost their director.
I think that officially got pushed back. Like, they've suspended production on it. They're still doing pre-production, but it already got pushed back from its other date because of how the pandemic is affecting what would be its production schedule.
Well, right now, all things being equal, got Shang-Chi for February 12th, which is where I think they should put the Eternals.
Boy, that movie that's going to be a hard sell, man.
Okay, yeah, they still have Doctor Strange at May 7th. So again, I think you can afford to just move stuff up. All right, anything else about the money?
I'm wondering if there's anything else I can break or see that will drive you further into connection.
Not up.
Hey. We have a whole bit once a week where you try to get me to have an aneurysm.
Yes, well, now you found yours. So we're looking at the...
The fact that the world exists currently right now in a state where I can give you back just a little bit of that.
So, right now they're still listing My Spy, which was delayed from last year, to be released on April 17th.
No
as
way.
a wide release. I'm like, come on. STX, what are you doing? Are you trying to do you not have a place to release this thing? On demand?
The CDC and the Office of the Government and the Office of the President just extended the self-quarantine social distancing guidelines through the end of May. Yeah, you're not releasing a movie in April.
Yeah, I don't know what STX is doing here, but they need to announce
they're probably owned by Endeavor.
All right, let's move on.
Yes, let's.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Charles Bramesco of Inside Hook. The MTV style editing feels passé. Its humor smug and fretty.
I can see that point a little bit, but it almost feels like ragging on the editing of this movie is a cheap excuse to say something negative. Like, I didn't like it, so what's something I can say bad about it?
So there's a giant nag element to the critical review of this movie, and here's one of those nags. Sarah Mars of Laney Gossip. You can't see it, but I just rolled my eyes.
I could hear it.
Parts of The Gentleman are fun and zippy. Classic Ritchie hyperkinetic hijinks and crime comedy. But here's the rub. But a lot of The Gentleman is gross, reductive, xenophobic, and racist as hell.
I'm sorry? How do you get to that? The rival gang is Chinese. I'm sorry, there are Chinese gangs.
We've had this discussion. Unless your villains are all cisgendered white people, your movie is racist. People of color are not bad people, and to say otherwise is racist.
You know, in all fairness, the fact that someone here is like sticking up for the Jewish villain instead of diving into the anti-Semitic cesspool that is the majority of popular takes these days, I almost want to give this person credit for that. Until you actually read the review and go, nope, they're all screw the Jews too. No, I'm sorry. If you want to have a racially diverse cast and setting for your film, some of them are going to be bad guys. Deal with it.
David Sims of The Atlantic, top critic.
Oh, not that rag.
For all its energy and vulgarity, The Gentleman is a slog. A tedious and unnecessarily unpleasant tour of ground that Ritchie's already covered.
Again, I think if you're going to have if there is a fair criticism to be leveled at this, I do tend to think it's in that vein where this is a lot of very samey Ritchie material. That said, again, largely my positive review stems from the fact that, okay, I can accept that and take it on its own terms, in which case it's, good, upper bound good, which is kind of a rarity. And you just kind of move on with that. The notion that a director has to abandon the totality of their style just to do new things to please a critic is unbelievably incorrect.
Jorge Ignacio Castillo of Planet S magazine. Planet X is a porn store here in Tampa. Just, not Planet X. Planet S. Like Sam. I am.
You gonna bury yourself any deeper there?
Nope. The Gentleman is a facsimile, multiple times over. It has all the elements of a Guy Ritchie movie. Star-studded cast, a token American, casual racism, sporadic bursts of violence, but it doesn't reach the heights of his best work.
I'm genuinely curious if this guy could name a Guy Ritchie movie other than the Sherlock Holmes ones.
Roxanne.
I mean, again, look, to be fair to the point, if you've seen, Rock and Rolla or Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, you've seen this movie, sure.
Roxana Haddadi, the Hadi Haddadi of Pajiba, Get 'em Jit 'em.
It's pronounced for hook.
So you say it for folk. Guy Ritchie goes full reactionary in the outdated and uninteresting The Gentleman, a boring slog of racist caricatures masquerading as style.
Okay, hold on. I mean this in all seriousness. At what point do we get to racist caricatures here? I mean, for crying out loud, Dry Eye is very clearly born and raised in London. I think they actually described him in the movie as James Bond if James Bond were Oriental.
Well, Oriental, that's racist.
Oh, whatever. But I mean, you know what I mean. You have the Lord George character who's very clearly an immigrant. So his grasp of English is good, but he's still got some of the kind of holdover accent. Dry Eye has none of that. He speaks the Queen's English. What's the matter with these people?
Martha K. Baker of KDXHX, St. Louis. Aren't we weary, very weary of seeing mobsters playing in the weeds? Enough! Enough!
So you're just railing against the existence of a film genre?
Abby Bernstein of Assignment X, which is different than Planet X, which is which is a porn store in Tampa. The casting is superb. But the gentleman clearly wants to be seen as bravely anti-PC. That's just another way of saying that it indulges in racism, anti-Semitism, and homophobia.
Okay, seriously, what's homophobic about this movie?
Gay people aren't being paraded through the streets, held on people's shoulders.
I mean, if the Fletcher character is gay, and wouldn't shock me, but it's also he also never makes a big deal out of it. He constantly comes on to Charlie Hunnam, who doesn't respond with a gay slur.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much. If this movie wanted to be homophobic, there's plenty of opportunity for them to do so.
So in our chat, and I'll talk about this publicly, Ronnie Adams, who I love dearly, is very easy to scotch. He reacts to everything. He reacts loudly. He reacts boisterously. It's one of the reasons why I used to tease him on source material, was because in general conversation, him and I tended to see things very differently, and he's not into the sort of vigorous debate style that you and I like. He just wanted to talk about comics and didn't see my rigorous debate style coming, which led to then me teasing him because he's so easy to get to react. And one of the ways I'll do that is with gay innuendo, because I don't fucking care. And he responds so angrily to it, and it cracks me up, and it's hilarious. So
Glad you find humor in the discomfort of others.
We went over this already. Yes, very much so. And so I don't know if Fletcher's gay or not, but as I said before, a lot of his shtick is shtick that I've done, and I'm certainly not gay. Wife, kids, attracted to women, and I don't, whatever. I don't really need to defend myself. The point is, just because you're doing that stuff doesn't mean you're gay. And just because you're doing that stuff, and you may or not be gay, is not a slur against gay people.
And I mean, really, he's not a gay stereotype. He doesn't have, any of the what we consider the stereotypical gay male character tropes. That's a ridiculous claim that... Okay, first of all, let me back up about this person's argument. If your belief that being anti-PC is just your desire to be public about your bigotry in whatever form you want to take it, that's a wild misread of the vast majority of people that push back against overly PC culture, if we're talking on the broader scale of things. Mark, you and I are very non-politically correct people.
Did I mention that there was a porn store in Tampa named Planet X?
I'm sure you visited there frequently. You probably brought your wife. That doesn't mean we're in favor of bigotry or homophobia or whatever have you. We're happy to call it out. We're also happy to live in a world where a movie can be, what this movie is when it wants to. It's because it's not racist. It's not homophobic. It's on the vulgar side of things, sure. But it's not what these people are trying to make it out to be when they say stuff like that.
No, a lot of this is virtue signaling, and a lot of this is people not wanting to live in a world that's vibrantly colored. They want to live in a world that's shades of gray, in the sense that nothing is particularly offensive or stretches your mind. Everything is safe, and I don't want to live in that world. To paraphrase Jello Biafra of the Dead Kennedys, I want to make noise, and I want to see stuff make noise. And some stuff is going to be offensive to me, and that's great. I just... These critics that are, so quick to tear down a movie that uses, blue language and maybe does play in stereotypes. Who cares?
Yeah, this is
the kind of doublespeak that I talked to Jesse about, who has not read 1984, much to my chagrin. But this is exactly the kind of shit George Orwell warned against, where we were going to cancel language and make it reductive to where you can't express yourself. and nothing. There'll be no language available in use of rebellion to brush up against the structures of society. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, this is exactly what George Orwell warned us against. And these critics couldn't be more Orwellian if they tried.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that, and one of the things I like about 1984 is that if you look at what's being espoused there, there's a lot of people who try to apply a political bent. When I say political, I mean look at this party, look at that party. We're living in 1984. The reality is the majority of what Orwell is trying to warn you about, and I think he goes into this, it's been a while since I've read the book, the government has such unbelievably limited say over culture that it's hilarious.
Right.
This is mostly stuff we do to ourselves before. There's this great quote, and I think it's somewhat applicable given the belief that the imperialist side of America is dying and that we're living in the end of an empire, to the extent that empires exist anymore. But no great empire is conquered from without before it destroys itself from within. Any culture that gets to that point has sowed those seeds themselves. And they're not political in aspiration. There's just a political side that's going to capitalize on the set of circumstances before them. That's one of the reasons you want, free speech. I'm nearly an absolutist when it comes to free speech if we're talking about my personal philosophy. And believe me, there's a lot of speech I would rather didn't happen. A lot of it.
Much of it on this network. In the give this man a bottle of Vyvanse or Ritalin because he clearly needs it for his ADD. L.C. Rengflo of Entertainment Voice, where the gentleman begins to stumble, is in its maze of a plot, which can get so convoluted and so crammed with names that simply following what's supposed to be happening becomes a chore. Sir!
Yeah, really.
If you couldn't follow this, maybe reviewing movies is not your thing.
Again, there's a lot of individual points, but we very specifically follow a single narrative. If you can't follow, I'm with you. If you can't follow this movie, they spell everything out for you very clearly.
Yeah, maybe if you're going to continue to review things, stick to something a little bit more your speed, like children's animation. And I mean the Y7 stuff. Or
the filmography of Michael Bay. I'm sure that's more your speed. There's guys doing a thing. I can follow it.
Matthew Monagle of The Playlist. Ritchie's The Gentleman proves he might be best served by walking away from the crime genre entirely.
Oh, piss off. The fact that you're I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this guy's belief in the crime genre of filmmaking at this point should be limited to lesbian gangsters. This guy wants Bonnie and Bonnie.
Pete Vonderhaar. Houston Press. Dry Eye is little more than an ambulatory sneer and serves as the primary focus for the script's throwaway racism. Well, there it is, folks.
I really can't... I'm sorry. Do they ever insult his race in that movie?
They don't call him a slant eye. They don't call... oh, God, what are they...
He's never yellow. He's never...
Yeah. Slope. Not once said.
He's never a gook.
Nope. He's never even a Chinese Chinaman.
Yeah, like I really don't get that take on this at all. Like we're going to heap racism on this guy. He's not a racial stereotype.
And how do they know that the Jeremy Strong character is Jewish? Does he ever outright say anything about being Jewish?
Yes.
He does, okay.
He is frequently described as the Jew from America.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. And that's how much that stuck with me.
They call his bodyguards Mossad crabs.
Oh, that's right, my Mossad crabs. Yeah, okay, I take it back.
Yeah, again, the notion that... Again, is this movie, like, racially sensitive in the way the majority of the PC culture wants it to be? No.
How about just be fucking adults?
Does that mean we're throwing out racial? This is not. I'm gonna catch me a rabbit. You know the cartoon I'm talking about.
I was going to say, this isn't even The Wire. Mark your bingo cards,
Oh
everybody.
God, you could. Not a joke. I don't think you could make The Wire today.
No, too many uses of the N-word. And,
Yeah, it's-
and any other colorful phrases. Could you even do the fuck scene anymore? In this
Yes.
environment?
Yes, that scene you could. You probably couldn't do. What couldn't you do? There's a couple of the drug scenes you probably couldn't do.
Yeah.
There's some bubble stuff you couldn't do. You couldn't do. Okay. You know what you really couldn't get. You probably could not get away with in 2020. I don't care what network you're on. You probably couldn't get away with Michael B. Jordan getting shot dead by other preteens.
Probably not. Gary M. Kramer of Salon.com.
Oh God, this guy.
Top critic. This crass, witless, and unpleasant attempt at comedy showcases Ritchie's lack of sense and taste. As two characters agree after looking at the bestiality video, you can't unsee it. But one does not have to look at it in the first place. Are you angry that you review films, sir?
This is a guy who should be spending his free time sucking on a tailpipe. What is the matter with you, sir? Okay, you know what the problem with this guy is? I think I found it. I think I know what's wrong with these top critics, these whiny, entitled, self-indulgent jackasses. They don't actually watch movies anymore. You see, sir, I have seen crass, unintelligent, witless schlock of film. I have suffered through many of those. You are the equivalent of the person going, what was that movie we did not too long ago that everyone was whining about the violence?
Rambo?
Sure. You're the people Rambo is too violent. Buddy, allow me to introduce you to my personal film collection. And you will see. That sounds like a threat. It's not. I have a lot of horror movies in my personal collection. You have not seen violence. You have not seen artless depravity. You have not seen any of the things you are whining about having to sit through in this movie. And I think that's the problem. These people now live in the cinematic equivalent of an ivory tower and haven't actually dirtied their hands about the business of seeing film in so long. They have forgotten what it is to watch genuinely bad movies.
All right,
Apart from the occasional big-budget blockbuster that they have to review.
This will be the last one, because I think this sums it all up. Steve Davis of Austin Chronicle. The gentleman already feels dated, even anachronous, particularly in these woke times.
I'm sorry, is there not a scene in this movie where a woman manipulates a bunch of men and then shoots two of them in the head just because she's kind of a badass? What is the matter with these people?
Wait, hang on. Peter Sabinsky, doesn't matter, efilmcritic.com. Dated and dull in equal measure, the gentleman finds Guy Ritchie in full get-off-my-lawn mode.
This really isn't a get off my lawn. Okay, this is a person who has never actually seen Gran Torino, which is where that comes from, by and large, in the popular culture. The scene where old grizzled war veteran Clint Eastwood brandishes an M1 Garand at a bunch of kids and he goes, "Get off my lawn." How can you be this inexperienced with the world of film and be paid to do this?
I gotta read you this one. This one's hilarious. Neil Pollack of Book and Film Globe. Ritchie is all about hip style, macho posturing, and opera-style violence that appears to have no lasting societal consequences. And the movie is also racist against Chinese people.
Does he actually say that?
Yes.
How is this? I'm sorry.
What is the
I
commentary
don't
on racism? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I do not for the life of me get where people are coming from with this is a racist movie. You have a Chinese antagonist, a British Chinese antagonist, I don't know. A British citizen of Chinese descent who is your primary antagonist. Casting some... Again, if you want an ethnically diverse setting and cast, they're going to wind up as villains. Remind me, Mark, were there a bunch of people complaining about Idris Elba being a bad guy in Hobbs and Shaw because he's black?
No, because he was Black Superman.
Sure. But you get what I mean. Like
Yeah,
that's the kind of idiocy we're dealing with here.
All right. It's all bad, but I think I'm done with this. I think my voice is done with this.
Ugh, these idiots, these profoundly disturbed, stupid people.
All right, tomorrow, right here on our network, we will be back again, myself and Robert, because we just can't get enough. We just can't get enough. Oh, we just can't get enough. Oh, we just can't get enough of each other. Do 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 podcast. We will be reviewing the aforementioned BoJack Horseman, the entire series from soup to nuts. I spent the entire month of March and some of February binging the entire series, and what a trip it's been. I have things to say. I largely enjoyed it. Some of it got to me a bit, but for the most part, it was a good recommend by Robert Winfree. I can see why you think it's the best show Netflix has ever done. I really, it is absolutely better written than Orange is the New Black. I can't compare it to House of Cards. I haven't watched that one.
Here's I think the big thing about BoJack for me, about why it's so great. I mean, in addition to it being sure, taking on its own merits, it's great. It's also consistently great.
Yeah,
again, we'll get into this more in more detail tomorrow, but House of Cards, the last season goes off a cliff. Orange is the New Black should have ended 3 seasons before it did.
Yeah, no, there were definitely highs and lows with Orange is the New Black. Again, I can't speak to House of Cards. And I would tell you with a lot of the stuff that we review from Netflix, it's kind of, some of it's great, some of it's not so great. Certainly that was the case with Marvel, where none of it was consistently outstanding across the board. I'll tell you this.
Closest thing we got to consistently outstanding was the 3rd season of Daredevil, and arguably the 1st season of Punisher, and even that had a little bit of up and down.
I will tell you this. If you like the 1st season of BoJack Horseman, you will like every season of BoJack Horseman. It consistently stays within at the same level of its craft is consistently good.
I would argue it gets the 1st season is probably the weakest. I think it gets better, but it doesn't. When I say the 1st season is the weakest, it's not like it sucks. It's real. 1st season is really good. It's really good to low level great. The next ones are more, it's great, but slightly more emphatically great.
They do some they do some daring things with it. You talked to me about the funeral episode, which is just a monologue.
I love BoJack. Part of the other reason I love the show, it takes risks with what it can do on television. Put air quotes around television if you want.
Right. No, and that's what I was saying. Like I think we'll have a good discussion. Like I said, there were some episodes, there were some parts of it, that were kind of a chore for me to get through. But that's not the show's fault. That's my reaction to it. Some of this was not my bag. Some of it was, and we'll talk about that more tomorrow. On Wednesday, I'll be reviewing, by myself, Heaven Shall Burn of Truth and Consequence. And then Thursday, myself and Pat Mullen in Theory will be reviewing we'll be doing the next chapter of our boxing history. We'll be talking about the Cassius Clay years. And that's it for this week. WrestleMania is this weekend. Oh, boy.
It's so big, it can't be contained in one night, Mark.
Oh, go fuck yourself.
Has to be a 2-night event. Don't you understand? There's so much content. We
couldn't-
have to spread it out over 2 4-hour broadcasts.
They couldn't even get rid of the pirate graphics.
Well, that costs money, you see. And we are still spiritually in the city of Tampa. It's good stuff, pal.
Sure. We'll be debuting a new show. We kind of did a dry run of it with Red Sun. Myself and Alexis Hana will be doing something we call Comic Stripped, where we read a book, we watch its direct adaptation, either in the film or TV show milieu, and then we talk about it, and we do a kind of compare and contrast. A little bit different than what we've been doing. It's kind of an idea that I started...
So wait. So what you've done is you've taken what was your entire philosophy around scheduling week to week and condensed it into a single show?
Yep, more or less. Why do 2 shows when we can do 1? And here's the thing. It occurred to me because, like, when we did Gotham by Gaslight, we broke that up over 2 shows. We repeated a lot of the same stuff. We kept comparing it to the book. And I'm like, why don't we just do 1 show where we compare it to the book? This was formerly known as the Split 7-inch because, I'm a music guy. But that didn't make any sense anymore. So we came up with Comic Stripped. And the first one we'll be doing will be Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We'll be looking at the book. We'll be looking at the animated movie adaptation.
Hey, you have that crossover. You have that piece of artwork that Benjamin did. That's Batman and the Turtles to use for your artwork for that.
I'd have to look for it. On Tuesday, we'll be reviewing a review of both nights of WrestleMania 36. Oh boy!
So, Mark, your podcast review is so big it can't be contained in 1 episode.
Yeah, I can. I can't stretch...
Shortest podcast ever. It stinks.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't stretch It Sucks into 2 podcasts.
Oh, yeah, you could. You start with It, and then you come back for the epic conclusion of Sucks.
And then on Wednesday, I'll be reviewing the new In This Moment. The name of the album is Mother. So we got that. And that's it. I don't want to give too much out because obviously things fall apart around here given the nature of our current environment very quickly. Jesse Starcher will be off for a couple of weeks. I think Chris Armstrong is slapping together some form of a source material or some shit. So maybe that'll come up on one of these days. I don't already have something plugged into the schedule. We'll see. I know there's a lot of talk about some of these other guys wanting to review this, that, or the other thing. We'll see if it actually happens. But that's all I'm going to be on in the near future. What say you? What do you got going on?
Again, we'll be talking BoJack tomorrow, which I think will be a very interesting discussion to have, and that'll be a lot of fun. There was no Ground and Pound episode this week. If news of Khabib officially being out of that fight had broken, I would have done an episode. That didn't break until early this Monday morning, was when that was made official. So the only thing I had to discuss, if I was going to do a show, would have been a very minor update, such as it was on the scheduling, and then talk about John Jones being arrested again.
Dumbass.
That man needs help. I mean, if you're, in your 20s and on top of the world and partying too much and, that's a story as old as time in combat sports and other sports. By the time you get to your 30s, I mean, if you kind of divorce John's history from this, let's just put this out there. In the midst of a global pandemic and self-quarantine, self-isolation guidelines in play, a 32-year-old man with a couple of kids, the mother of his children has been his fiancée for a number of years, is arrested on late at night / early in the morning with on counts of aggravated DWI, possession of an open container, reckless use of a firearm, and failure to provide insurance for your vehicle. Now, again, take the fact that this is John Jones out of that. Mark, this is that sounds like a person that needs help. That there is something at home in their personal life that is not right. That has a chemical issue or some kind of chemical dependency, addiction issue. That I'm not I can't bring myself to be, aggressive at John Jones in any capacity over this. That man needs help.
You're not wrong.
And I mean, again, I phrase it that way because you're a social worker. Look at those circumstances. What would you like?
Okay, yes, but people that need help, and I'm graciously willing to give them help, and I want them to get help, can also still be dumbasses.
I am not saying that man is his ability to make life decisions is. His risk management, if nothing else, is very, very low. So this is not me sticking up for John in that respect. It's just this is someone that needs help in a bad way, and I really hope the people in his life that are in a position to provide that service do so.
Are you going to record this Sunday?
With the news of 249 officially being changed, yes. Now that we have some more official stuff on that, Khabib is stuck in Russia, and Russia just closed its borders. I mean, I imagine by the time Sunday rolls around, Dana will still be obstinately insisting that 249 is going to happen. We'll have a better...
Just move everything to June like everybody else is doing.
I don't know. Okay? Believe me, I wish I knew. I can speculate, and there's a lot of kind of assumptions going around, some of which might have more validity than others. But why they refuse to just, cancel everything through June and then just pay look, they don't want to pay all the fighters. They never want to pay fighters. I don't give a flying insert your obscenity there. What they say, they hate paying fighters. I mean, they don't pay any of them what they're actually worth. None of them. So they hate doing that. I think if they're the ones that cancel events instead of just postponing or shuffling around, they have to pay everyone. That's my assumption. At this point, I also kind of think that Dana White is just being obstinate. He just won't take the loss. No, we said it and we're going to do it. Come hell or high water. And just, no, buddy, you're not. There's been some speculation that Endeavor, the parent company of the UFC, is a little bit strapped for cash on hand and need the kind of liquidity that an active UFC brings. I mean, look, there's a very real bit of speculation going around that big dividend they took out for all of their celebrity investors was to compensate them for losses after they called off their IPO. And now they're a little bit strapped for cash, and they kind of want the cash flow and cash on hand that an active UFC represents to them. So there's a lot of stuff like that that's kind of being thrown around as speculation. I don't know. Here's what I do know about UFC 249. It's not happening.
Okay.
Look, the very moment a UFC employee gets this, or Dana gets this, the entire tone and rhetoric will change. He'll start saying stuff that is completely 180 degrees from everything he's been saying up until now, and no one's going to call him on his BS. Because that's the world we live in if you follow the sport of MMA. So this Sunday, we will break down how 249 is... I'm going to hope by that point it's officially been canceled.
Talk about your Dominic Cruz thing real quick.
I was getting to it.
All right. Not fast enough for my take.
Fair enough. Given the lack of combat sports content, by and large, I've been keeping myself busy. And this last week, I released a career retrospective, skill study, a little bit of a hybrid of the two kind of things about Dominic Cruz, former UFC and WEC bantamweight champion. And you can find that. I don't get as deep into his technique as I would have liked, but I didn't want to get too bogged down in the weeds by that. So I I do talk a little bit about it, but I made a decision that given that I was going to try and talk about a chunk of his career, there was stuff that was going to be more like historical and narrative based as opposed to purely technical, and consequently a little bit of stuff had to be trimmed from what I wanted to talk about. So if you're interested in hearing me talk about his career, kind of the adaptations he has, the way he forced the sport to evolve, you can listen to that. I put a lot of effort into that. I rewatched a lot of fights. I wrote out I don't do a script in the traditional sense of the word. It's not word for word, but I will find paragraphs or phrases that I like, write them in, make notes about what I want to talk about so it stays structured. And I did one of those for that show. So please, I put a fair bit of effort into that if you'd listen to it. And, if you like the show, feel free to let me know. I tend to operate, for some reason, almost in a vacuum. Like, I put stuff out there, but I never really hear back, good, bad, or otherwise.
Well, that's not true. Some people tell you how good your stuff is.
Sure, once every, I hate to say blue moon because that implies something different than what I mean, but it again, like, there's a bunch of people out there that, again, live in a world of kind of instant feedback, and I live in a world of vacuum. Like, here, I did a thing. Crickets. Okay, I did this other thing. More crickets. I did a thing here, and I put a lot of effort into it. Mostly crickets. I did a thing here that I think sucks. Crickets. Like, I can't establish a response to I can't establish a response to an absence of feedback.
All right. We may or may not.
Hey, speaking of, did you listen to it?
What? The Dominic Cruz thing?
Yeah.
It's on my playlist. I haven't gotten there yet. Hey, I finally listened to your Lock and Key episode on source material.
Wow, that was only a while ago.
You know what? I'm a busy man. I got shit to do.
Weren't you on that show? No, that was me and Alexis.
Yes, who took Jesse on a wild and woolly 3-hour tour.
Yeah, we had fun talking about that. I enjoyed discussing that, the graphic novel. Much more so than the Netflix series, which apparently just got renewed for reasons that are beyond human understanding.
I believe you said that if they renewed it, you'd continue with me.
I don't believe I said that.
Oh, well, boy, am I not having that argument with you now.
I don't know. Look, I might have said if they continue with this idiocy, sure, I'm now up to my waist in blood, and it makes no difference to go forward or backward.
All right, folks, we may do more of these depending on what the VOD situation looks like. I think for the time being, a lot of what's come out already, we either talked about or was already on VOD. We did The Invisible Man. We did. We're not going to do The Hunt. I mean, there's Emma, but.
If no one sees it, does it really exist?
Yeah, exactly. We did Bad Boys already, so.
Again, I think what we might do is we'll just go back in time, like find a movie that, you know what, let's do this. You pick a movie that's available, that is easily available. Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, whatever. You pick something and this can be from you pick a movie you like and you want to talk about. And I'll watch it, and we will then do essentially a retrospective Damn You Hollywood on something. We'll talk about how much money it made or didn't make very briefly, then we can talk about how critics responded to it. Because, Rotten Tomatoes is actually pretty good about aggregating that stuff from the past. They've migrated a lot of old reviews from older movies, so we will still have access to all of that.
Sure. That sounds like fun. If I can think of something that doesn't necessarily fit into the on trial category, that's something that's, why on God's green earth would I ever would have thought to podcast about this? We can talk about it. I'll come up with some ideas, and we'll hash this out a little bit more. We'll try to get some Damn You Hollywoods on the schedule, such as it is.
And hey, you know what? You guys, listeners, I know there's a few of you. Not a lot, but there are some. If you have a movie that Mark and I have not reviewed, and I'm going to put that caveat on there, we are open to suggestions. If there's a movie we haven't reviewed that you think would be amusing to hear us review. Mark will come up with a list. I'll come up with a list. But we are happy to respond to the listening public. If you guys have some movies that you think, hey, you two knuckleheads need to talk about this, and we haven't already, there's a good chance it'll go to the front of the line.
All right, with that said, this has been DMU Hollywood's review of The Gentleman. Be well, be safe.
Wait.
What?
In honor of BoJack.
Oh, Jesus.
This has been Damn You Hollywoob. Because that's how it ends with the B.
Yeah, for a while there was just Hollywoo.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite running gags from that show. BoJack just steals the D from the Hollywood sign, and everyone just decides we're Hollywoo now.
Yep. All right, so this has been Damn You Hollywoo. Be well, be safe, and behave.